everybody and welcome back to Big OGGIE World. How are you all today? Today I am flying solo. John is around but he's busy doing editing somewhere else, so it's just me and you. And we are going to make a vegetarian recipe today. Everybody loves a quiche and it's spring, and what's perfect about spring, or one of the best things about spring when it comes to food anyway, there's two things. One is Jersey Royal potatoes. They've just come in and we've managed to grab a bag this week, so we'll be having them over the weekend. But also asparagus. Now I love asparagus and I know you can get it all year round, but when it's actually in season it seems to taste so much better. So we are going to make a cheddar, asparagus and caramelised onion quiche. We're making it completely from scratch, so we're making our own pastry. It's a very simple pastry, and there is going to be a little bit of time taken in the middle because we want to caramelise some onions, so it's not just a case of just throwing them in. That's going to take a little while, but let's just crack on. So to start off with, you need 130 grams of plain flour. You don't need to worry about the amounts that I'm saying because John, as always, will put a little list underneath so you can all see it and look back on it. And 65 grams of butter that's been chopped into small pieces. In that goes. We're going to rub that together until it forms small breadcrumbs and bring it together as a pastry. You're also going to need a 20 centimetre fluted loose-based quiche dish. I mean, if you don't have a loose bottom one, then I guess it's, you know, it'll be fine otherwise. It's just you won't be able to turn it out. So that's up to you. And butter it well, which I've done. So let's get this pastry done and then we can crack on. So all we're doing with this is literally rubbing it together just like we did when we were at school. I'm sure you all were, well, actually that's an assumption because I don't think kids necessarily do cookery now at school, which is a massive shame. I think everybody should learn some basics when they're little, even if it's only biscuits. But I think once you get used to handling things and learning the terminology, I mean, if you don't learn in school how to rub butter and flour together and somebody said rub together, how would you wouldn't really know what to do, would you? So education is changing all the time. I think it's more of a tick box exercise nowadays for a lot of people. And some of the fun stuff that we learned when we were at school is just not done anymore, which I think is a real shame. Anyway, I'll shut up going on about that. So it's as simple as that. Took 2 minutes. Now I'm going to get, I like to use a butter knife. And we need some cold water. Now, you're going to need between 3 and 4 tablespoons, but don't just whack it in. Put a couple in to start off with. And start bringing it together with a knife. Because the worst thing you can do for pastry is make it too wet. So if you sort of press it together with a knife, you'll get a much nicer, crisper pastry if you do it gradually. Just add a little tiny bit at a time. And keep applying pressure with your knife against the side of the bowl. The ideal thing is when you've made this bowl of pastry, the actual dish or bowl that you're working from will be completely clean. There will be no sticky bits or anything. It will be completely clean. And that is nearly there. So when you get nearly there, then you can just get your hands in, bring it together. You'll end up with a little bowl of dough like that, and a clean dish. So, next step, flour your surface. Not too much, it shouldn't need too much, but you do not want it to stick, obviously. Flour your pin. And then roll out your pastry. Now, another thing I was taught at school is to turn your pastry, not your pin. Funny how things stick in your head, isn't it? And we sort of do almost quarter turns. And the ideal is that you keep the basic shape of your pastry. This is going to be lovely and thin, because the last thing we want is a great big thick clod of pastry, especially when you've got such a delicate filling. Now, I said don't do that, but I just did it. Never mind. Right, let's just check and see if that's big enough. That's perfect. So, pick up your pastry gently, lay it into your tin, and then manipulate it or maneuver it how you need to. Try to avoid holes in the bottom, because obviously you're going to put liquid in here. And also be careful not to stretch your pastry, so sort of let it flop in, lift the sides up and let it flop into the corners, like so. Now, I'm not going to cut the edge off yet, just because there might be a bit of shrinkage, so I'm going to leave it be, and then once we've cooked it, then I'll trim the top off. So the next thing we need to do now is to prick it over with a fork, not that one. That should hopefully stop it rising. We need some kitchen baking paper. Give it a scrunch up. Put it into your flan paste. Like I said, try and get this into the corners, like so. And then we're going to fill it with bacon beans. And we're going to cook it in the oven at 180 fan, 200 if you don't have a fan, and gas mark 6 for 20 minutes. But 15 minutes in, you're going to take it out and take out the paper and the beans and just put it in for its final 5 minutes without the stuff in the inside. So I'm going to preheat my oven and get this in, and then I'll come back and we'll start doing the filling. Okay, so that's been 20 minutes. I'm going to take it out of the oven now, and we need to reduce our oven down to 170 fan, 190 if you're normal, and gas mark 5. Right, so next steps, we need to start making the filling. I apologise about the oven, but I can't turn it off now because obviously we're going to need it. So, first off, we are going to melt our remaining butter, and we are going to caramelise our onions. So we've got 2 onions which I've chopped, or sliced, not chopped. I've sliced them thinly, You don't need to do like fine chop or anything like that, and in fact it's actually quite nice if you've got strands, because at least they hold some sort of integrity and don't become some sort of onion puree type thing. So this is going to be the thing that takes the time. I didn't tell you where I found this recipe. It was in one of those magazines that you find when you're sat in a waiting room or whatever, and I was flicking through and this recipe was in there. I don't even know what magazine it was, but I thought it sounded lovely, so I just took a picture of the recipe, and that's where we're at. So the recipe says that your onions are going to take about 15 minutes. Now, one thing that I've learned recently is that caramelizing onions is not an exact science. It depends on the sugar content of your onion and the water content and all those things. And if you rush it, you won't get the absolute best flavour for your dish. So it will take as long as it takes. You need to do it sort of on a medium to lowish heat. You don't need to try and do it quickly, because if you try and do it quickly, you're just going to like fry them as if you would, you know, having a hot dog or a burger or something like that. And that's not what you want here. This quiche is all about flavour, but because of the asparagus and things, it's delicate flavours. So we're going to take our time and caramelise our onions for as long as it takes to get them nice and golden and sticky. So whilst that is doing, I am going to put on a pan of water on the hob behind me. It's a pan of salted water that I'm going to bring to the boil, and once it reaches the boil, I'm going to add my asparagus pieces, and we're going to cook them in boiling water for about 3 minutes, just to sort of soften them slightly. And then we're going to take them out and quench them in cold water to stop them cooking too far. So I'll be back when we get to that stage. Okay, so my water is boiling and I'm going to put in my bits of asparagus. We're going to allow that to come back to the boil and then cook them for 3 minutes. Go. Whilst they are cooking, I'm going to fill this little bowl of cold water, and then as soon as my asparagus is cooked, I can scoop them out and plop them into the cold water to stop them cooking any further, because what we really don't want is asparagus to be overcooked and slimy in our quiche. That's not good. So we'll stop it cooking, and then it will be lovely and cooked, but still with a little bit of bite when it's in our quiche. In the meantime, our onions are still sizzling away slowly. My pan is on a number 2, a level 2, so you can tell how gently we are doing this. The other thing to remember when you're doing this, and the heat that you're putting through it, is that you're cooking this in butter, and butter, let's face it, butter is the bomb, and you can't get better flavour than butter, quite frankly. I don't think so. That's my personal opinion. But if you have it too hot, you will burn the butter. And I know that some people like these brown butter things and whatever, but when you're caramelising onions, you do not want brown butter. You want it to do it nice and gently. And what we're trying to do, remember, is to encourage the onions' natural sugars to come out of the onions, and that will be what causes the caramelisation and the sweetness. It smells lovely. I mean, you can't beat the smell of onions frying anyway, but you do get that sweet sort of aroma going on. So let me turn down the asparagus a bit. Our flan case is lovely and cooked, so all I'm going to do now is just go around the top with a sharp knife and chop off the excess. This can be a bit messy, so I'm back in a minute. And there is our asparagus done. So I'm just going to scoop it out with a slotted spoon. It's still a really beautiful, vibrant colour. And straight into the cold water to stop it cooking any further. Now I'm making this in the end of April. Not quite sure when you're going to get to see it, but hopefully. My thoughts were, if we can get this one out in just about a month, we have got the King's coronation. Now I'm not sure if people are, you know, celebrating with their own little parties, or if you're going to have a street party or something like that where you are, but this would be a perfect recipe to make and take to a gathering like that. I mean, everybody loves a quiche. It's a vegetarian option, so, you know, you're covering all bases practically. And I'm pretty sure that those of you who are vegan will have ways of manipulating this recipe to make it suitable for you also. I'm sure there's vegan cheese and things like that out there, although I'm not really sure what you do about eggs. I'll need to look that up. So literally now we just have to wait. We have to wait for the onions to do, and they're going to be a little while longer, I'm afraid. So I'll cut back when they're ready. See you in a minute. Hello. Did you think I was never coming back? Because that was certainly a long time. Anyway, my onions are now cooked at last. So it's time to put things together. In this jug, I have the cream, the eggs, the milk, and a little bit of salt and pepper. We have our case already cooked and ready to go. So what we're going to do is layer some onions and asparagus into our case. Like so. Top tip, put your pastry case onto a baking sheet because it is so much easier than trying to wrangle it when it's full of liquid. Plus, if you should spring a leak, it will just sit on your tray and not go into the bottom of your oven, warranting a full-scale mass clean. Next up is our asparagus bits. Place them in. You can do this sort of rustic-like, or you can do it pretty. It's entirely up to you. The nice thing about this recipe is there is plenty of filling in it, because there's nothing worse than having a quiche of any description with great big gaps and just eggy custard. That's not good. There we go, there's our asparagus. Next thing is we're going to add 3/4 of our cheese. Sprinkle it over. Kind of spread it out so it gets into like the little nooks and crannies. Like that. Give your mixture a bit of a beat. And then pour over your custardy mix. Be careful, you don't want to pour it too quickly because the last thing you want is a spillage. Plus the fact you don't want to miss any or, you know, waste any. There we go. And finally, the last bit of cheese you got, just sprinkle that on the top because that will go nice and brown and give you a nice finish. The rest of the cheese that is underneath the liquid is obviously going to melt, so this is just a little bit of contrast. And there we have it. So that now is going to go into the oven. Remember, we've reduced the temperature, so it's down to 170 fan, 190 if you don't have a fan, gas mark 5, and it's going to go in for 20 to 25 minutes depending on your oven. You'll know when it's done because it will rise up a bit and it'll be lovely and golden brown. So I'll stick it in and we'll come back when it's cooked. See you in a minute. So my quiche has been in for nearly 35 minutes, and I guess that just goes to show that things are just guides. It's obviously going to have a, you know, an impact on what type of oven you have, whether you have a particularly hot one or whether your oven's cooler, if there's hot spots, all that sort of thing. And I do have to turn my stuff regularly because I do have a hot spot. There we go. But it is finally ready. So let me get it out and show you. As you can see, it is now lovely and golden brown. It smells wonderful. It looks great. It's going to be one of those things that is quite hearty because there is quite a lot of filling in there, so that's brilliant. Like I said, ideal if you're going to go to a street party or, you know, something along those lines. Fantastic if you want to go for a picnic. It'd be wonderful for a picnic. They recommend that you do serve it warm. I obviously can't cut it at the minute because it's really hot, and that's just no good for a quiche anyway. You need to sort of let it cool right down. So we will take a picture of it later on once I have cut it, and John will insert it at the end. And so I hope you've really enjoyed today. Do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so. If you have, thank you very much. But if you do know anybody else that might like to subscribe, please push them our way. If you've not already, go over to Facebook and find us on our Facebook page, Big OGGIE World over there, where you can post pictures and comments and ask us to do things and all that sort of stuff. So it's been great today and I've really enjoyed cooking with you. So we will see you all again very soon. Bye for now.